Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and dear audience. Today, Conflict and Resilience Research Institute Canada has organized a webinar, and this is episode number 9. And our today's theme is United Nations Peacekeeping Operations. We are delighted to have amongst us three former UN peacekeepers, and including myself, four, who would be sharing their own experiences and reflections on their respective UN peacekeeping operations. And it is quite a unique opportunity to host and welcome all the panelists. So before we go into the webinar, the contents of the webinar, let me acknowledge, as we usually do, Conflict and Resilience Research Institute is located on original lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of Metis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. And this particular webinar is we would say that important for us for two reasons. First, very recently, Canada lost its opportunity to take up a position into the group of non-permanent members in UN Security Council. And second, we see a wave of issues coming up due to COVID-19 in terms of peacekeeping operations and its implementation on the ground. So Conflict and Resilience Research Institute has decided that this could be a unique opportunity to discuss about the various aspects of the UN peacekeeping operations. Before I go into the actual the key areas of this presentation, let me set the agenda and the context of our today's main discussion. So we would like to discuss today the concept of state-centric peacekeeping operations to people-centric peacekeeping operations. This whole thematic area came into our focus because since 1992, there are several initiatives undertaken to reform the current modus operandi of UN peacekeeping operations. For example, as you see in the screen, in 1992, first Agenda for Peace was launched, and afterwards it was succeeded by 1995 Supplement to an Agenda for Peace, then followed by Brahimi Report, and finally the high-level independent panel on peacekeeping operations, in short HIPPO, and this was launched in 2015. So these are the key documents and key efforts that the United Nations have undertaken to reform the current modus operandi of UN peacekeeping operations. So while going through this, the four important efforts that UN undertook to reform, we see a number of challenges. I mean, there are a number of challenges, of course, but these are the three key challenges. And I took this particular part of the report written by John Arnold, and he wrote this piece in peaceoperationsreview.org. And there's a web link given for the audience if you are more interested to go into the detail. Mr. John Arnold wrote that because of UN involvement, and it continues to represent the highest possible level of internationalization of a conflict or any other domestic issues, it continues to face reluctance on the part of individual government and increasingly regional groupings to entrust the organization with sensitive issues such as preventive diplomacy and negotiation of internal conflicts. Secondly, UN peacekeeping forces continue to be a pickup team, quote unquote, whose constituent parts often do not share the same language, doctrines, training and equipment, or national interest. The UN continues to struggle to move beyond the most symbolic role it played in support of pre-existing agreements and become a relevant actor in situations of active hostilities. And finally, because the UN continues to be a relatively minor player in the field of international cooperation and continues to be fragmented among a multiplicity of autonomous agencies, it continues to face great challenges in the consolidation of peace in countries that painfully emerge from conflict. So these are the broad three things that triggered our attention, and how future peacekeeping operations might look like. And this is actually our core agenda today. And in one of the reports of the same organizations, we see they highlighted three key areas that needs reform or some sort of change in the future. So the use of force and the principles of peacekeeping, peace building, and challenges of having to keep peace. And by saying so, I have tried to lay the background of today's discussion. And before I invite the first panelist today, let me wrap up the initial discussion here by saying that United Nations is a conglomeration of states. There are numerous ways that the reform or the way UN operates in the field had been taken in the past, and maybe in the future, similar efforts would be undertaken. What is important for all of us, those who participated physically in many of the field missions, we always thought that what would be the best way to achieve the mandates, and what are the actual obstacles to achieve the mandates. And this is why we invited our esteemed panelists today to share from their own personal experience. So now, without further ado, let me welcome the first panelist today, and let me also have the privilege to introduce him to the audience. Uh, Colonel retired Mamun Mahmud was born in Bangladesh, and if you kindly wave, sir. And he served Bangladesh Army for 30 years, thank you, and voluntarily retired as a colonel. He served UN mission in Liberia as an observer, and United Nations Iraq Kuwait Observation Mission UNIKOM as a contingent member of a mechanized infantry battalion. He has done his first master's in defense studies and second master's in business administration. He completed advanced certificate in business administration from Institute of Business Administration, Dhaka University, Bangladesh. He also has completed diploma in supply chain management from International Trade Center from Geneva, Switzerland. And during his career in the military, he worked in the capacity of command staff and as a trainer. Presently, he's studying diploma in construction engineering at George Brown College, Toronto, Canada. Thank you very much, and Colonel Mahmoud, floor is yours.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for inviting me in this webinar. To say about my experience, I participated in two UN missions. One was in UNIKOM, which was in Iraq and Kuwait, and the second one was Liberia. To say something about the UNIKOM, the mission was located in the Iraq and Kuwait border, and the headquarters was in Iraq, and my battalion headquarters was in Kuwait. And the mission started in April 1991 and ended in October 2003. The mission mandate was to establish by Security Council resolution on 9th April 91 following the forced withdrawal of Iraqi forces from the territory of Kuwait. The Council was acting under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Center. UNIKOM set up initially as an unarmed observation mission was to monitor a demilitarized zone along the boundary between Iraq and Kuwait, and at the Khor Abdullah waterway to deter the violation of the boundary and to observe any hostile action mounted from the territory of one state against the other. In February 1993, a series of incidents took place in the border, and the Security Council decided to increase the UNIKOM's strength and to extend its terms of reference to include capacity to take physical action to prevent violation of the demilitarized zone and of the newly demarcated boundary between Iraq and Kuwait by acting under Chapter 7, the Council demonstrated that the international community would act decisively should Iraq attempt to attack Kuwait again. To further underline this, all 5 permanent members of the Security Council for the first time in a peacekeeping operation agreed to provide military observers. The mandate of UNIKOM was completed on 6 October 2003. So that was the official mandate. And how did we do this, or how did we enforce the UN mandate in the ground? As Dr. Ahmed introduced you, that I was a contingent member of an infantry battalion, where we used to monitor the total demilitarized zone, which was about 250 kilometers in length and breadth. It was 15 kilometers breadth. So this total area used to be under complete vigilance through mechanized patrols and guarding the crossing points between the 2 states. And this was a mission more of state-centric. There was very less to interact with the people or any other government organizations. This used to be just an UN presence there to keep the 2 countries or their elements away out of the demilitarized zone. So there was, as I said, it was just a state-centric mission. But in the second mission, which I participated as an observer, this was a mission in Liberia, United Nations mission in Liberia. The mission was deployed in October 2003 in accordance with the Security Council Resolution 1509/2003, after the signing of the August 2003 Comprehensive Peace Agreement. The mission highlights was that the United Nations mission in Liberia is a multi-dimensional peacekeeping operation comprising military, police, and civilian personnel. UNMIL was deployed, as I said, in 2003, and the mission got ended in around 2018 or 2017. Or I do not have the exact date at the moment in my hand. The mission mandate was protection of civilians, reform of justice and security institutions, human rights promotion and protection, public information, protection of UN personnel. Now, this was a mission which was completely people-centric. The issue which is now being discussed, that transforming from state-centric to people-centric, I had the experience of witnessing the both end of the 2 concepts. So this was a very interesting mission. This in Liberia, whereas there used to be armed security forces for ensuring the physical security of people and the properties and the institutions, where I was an observer without arms. What we used to do practically on the ground, that we used to travel along the length and breadth of our area of responsibility given, and we wish to meet the people there, visit the institutions, various like the hospitals, financial institutions, schools, the local administration offices, the local representatives, local leaders. We wish to talk on various issues as was given to us. There were as many as 25 to 30 points on which we used to interview. That is to include the various part and parcel of the socio-economic matters, like the local financial conditions, the education system, the health system, how people used to get the health services in the hospitals and the health centers, how the education was running, how the local law enforcement agencies were working, and we used to interview them to get their experiences as well. And at the end of the day, we used to make a report on our interview, on our experience from the day-long visits, and submit it to the UNMIL headquarters. And they used to, UNMIL headquarters used to get similar report from other observers also every day, and every day they used to compile and try to figure out what is the present condition, what is the present scenario at the moment as far as the socio-economic are concerned, and they wish to make their plans how to improve the present state to the other year, to improve the total condition. So over a period of 15-16 years of mission, the mission actually achieved its mandate, and now, as you see, the Liberia has come to a point of peace. They have run consecutive 2-3 national level elections peacefully. They have selected their local leaders. The local institutions have started to work, like the law enforcement agencies, the judicial system, the financial institutions, the schools and colleges and the universities are working fine. People are celebrating their festivals delightfully. And as you see today's Liberia's picture, it is evident that mission mandate has been achieved. So that's what I had to say about my mission experience. Now I shall be present here to if you have any questions or if you have anything to ask me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colonel Mahmoud, for your part of the presentation. And we do recognize that Liberia possibly transitioned quite successfully from conflict to peace. So, ladies and gentlemen, our next presenter and panelist today is Major retired Kazy Atiqul Haque, and he served in Bangladesh Army from 1994 to 2019. In his early career, he was deployed in Chittagong Hill Tracts, and he has undertaken and participated in pacification, peace treaty negotiation, and the implementation of Bangladesh government and tribal nations peace treaty for over 4 years. He is a veteran peacekeeper, and he joined the United Nations mission in Sudan, UNMISS, in 2005 as part of its first military observer team, and was directly involved in observing and negotiating the implementation of peace treaty. In 2013, he served for the in the peacekeeping mission as staff officer at Sector Headquarters East in United Nations operations in Cote d'Ivoire. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Major Kazy Atiqul Haque, and I shall share his presentation very quickly here. And floor is yours.
Good evening, gentlemen and ladies. Thanks, Dr. Kausa, for giving me the chance to speak in such auspicious gathering. Today's topic is the UN Peacekeeping operation from state to the people-centric operations. And I like to highlight my true experience in the United Nations Peacekeeping mission, and I'll try to relate the topic with my experience. I had the opportunity to serve for 2 missions. First one is UNMISS, the United Nations mission in Sudan, which started on 24th March 2005 and ended in 9 July 2011. And the other one was ONUCI, the United Mission Peacekeeping operation in Ivory Coast. I'll talk in later on. So in this operation, UNMISS, as you can see, the mission started on 2005, and I was also lucky to be the first observer deployed on the ground. Basically, it was an observer mission. The initial plan was to deploy 750 military observer on the ground, and later on it was decided some troops should be there for the protection of the observer. That means the primary focus was on the military observer, and troops was of only for the support or guiding for the observer. So now let us see the mandate of the mission. That's how we can understand what was the emphasis given there. First of all, it was basically a monitor and the negotiation type mission. You can see the mandate was to monitor and verify the implementation of peace agreement and to investigate violations, which was basically the UNMISS duty. And liaison with the bilateral donors for the formation of joint integration unit. There was team integrated where different people was made together, where military observer, the donor, the civil affairs, other conflict people, all they had made a group, and there was the negotiation talk between them. And the observe and monitor movement of armed groups to assist the establishment of the DDR program, and the special attention for the women and children, especially in Sudan. There are a lot of underage children and women was forced to be act as combatant, and there was a very dangerous situation where the small children were lost their legs, and they were in very dangerous situation. That's why the point came up. And the assist to the parties in promoting and understanding of peace and peace process. That was also our duty to explain the aim of the mission to the local people, so that the people can support the mission, and to talk on the different parties, so that the population support is towards the mission. That was another mandate to the observer or the people on the ground. And next point is to assist the parties in restructuring the police service in the Sudan. That's why basically the Bangladesh, especially a team of Bangladesh was brought from the police department to train the police of the Sudan, so that the infrastructure can be developed for the long run peace process can be established. That I must say that was a very good step, so that they was looking for the after peace thinking, so that if the infrastructure or the different formation is established, so that when the troops are withdrawn, the things will be on the ground effectively. And you can see the next one is to assist the parties in promoting the rules of the law. That means the judiciaries and the justice, all those departments were reformed, and UN or UNMISS was assisting them for training, for establishing different court, all those things. And then you can see the to ensure and educate human rights presence. That was a major focus of the UN, so that the human rights established on the ground, to ensure and the last but the least, the important was the last one, to provide guidance and technical assistance to support the preparation for and conduct of elections and the referendum provided by the comprehensive peace treaty. Actually, treaty was that for made a election to decide to the Sudan people they should be together or they should be separated. That was the main agenda of the mission, and there was the peace treaty, and the UNMO was on the ground to observe the different parties, so that they don't break the treaty. So the troops were deployed. As I see, initially their mission was about 750 military observer, and to support them there was maximum limit of military person were 10,000 military people, and there was some other civilian also. And when the mission was closed, you can see the state. When it was closed in 2011, the number was troops were 9,300, and observers reduced to 500 because election was done and it was about to close. And some police was 700, and some civilian people are there. Next, please. Sorry for the map; it was quite small. I try to explain. Actually, Sudan was the largest country of the Africa. That's why the map it needs actually huge place to space it. It was the largest country of Africa at that time, but not now, because it was then divided in different pieces. So Sudan had the different issue for the conflict, because basically the south part of Sudan, they are the original people of Sudan, They are named as Dinga in a nation. They are a bit dark black and long figure, and they have a different look than the people in the northern part. People are Muslim, while the southern people are Christian. Northern people are basically migrated from Arab, and the majority people have become Arab. So that's why there was a conflict between Christian and the Muslims and the Arabian and the Dinga. They're the main crisis to defend ethnicity, and they want to try to separate it themselves. So here, the whole country was divided in 6 sectors. The sector 1 was holding by the Bangladesh contingent. They were in the just lower part of the map. It in Juba, the whole South Sudan, which is now an independent country now. The Bangladesh was operating in this area. Exactly, this area was for Juba and Bangladesh. And the second sector, it was in Malakal. You can see upper than that, it is it's a bit down, a bit down. Yeah, it is Malakal. So this is holding by. It's up. Yeah, this is holding by India basically, and you can see the other sector. Sector 5 is Edamazin. Edamazin was holding by the Pakistani forces, and so as I was the observer at the initial days, I was deployed in ABA. It was sector 6, but we are not allowed to go to the ABA because these are the main pivot of the operation, because this place was asking by both the party. So SPLA, the South People Liberation Army, and the SAF, Sudanese Armed Forces, both were demanding the same pieces. So that's why both people was face to face on the ground, and they did not allow any UN forces to be deployed there. So for the first 2 months, I was in Kadugli deployed, but my sector was in ABA. So what I did, we had a helicopter every day at 9 o'clock. We, the observer, we used to fly from Kadugli and fly around 100 kilometers and have a heli patrol from 3 to 4 hours over the ABA sector, so that people understand UN people are there. So this is how we used to monitor the things. After around 1 month, the SPLA, who was actually holding the ground, allowed us to be on the ground. When my helicopter was down, we were just surrounded by all armed people pointing the rifle towards us. We were 7 people there, and just with the armed guard, we were taken to the headquarters. If not prisoner, but it's a very shabby condition. You don't, in that stressful situation, we were unarmed, and there we had a meeting. We could cool them, and then they were allowed our stay without arms for some 2 days, where they were without ration. Even though we started foothold there for 2 days, then we could make them understand that we are for them, we are for the people. Then they could make us some tent, and we established our camp there. So gradually, I was in Sudan, ABA. After 6 months, I was posted from there in Kassala in the south part, north part near the Red Sea. And then my mission was ended. I was there for 2005 and 2006. And next part, please. Actually, see the activities. The country was basically huge with very poor infrastructure, no roads, no communications, no law and order situation. There are frequent looting, fire burned the people, so no food. So the actually, as a observer or as a military people, we used to go guard the people. We used to distribute food to the people. We have to make the schooling. We have to provide the water supply or the basic needs. This is how we could win the heart of the people. And you can see the election supporting with the helicopter, bringing the ballot paper, all these things. At the election day, we were there to protection of the booth center, all those things. So things was going very nicely, and the election was nice and very good. And with the election mandate, with the prime requirement for the UN people, the South Sudan people voted against their separation, and with that, the new country formed, and thereby their mission was closed. Next slide, please. So this, as an UNMISS, we face some difficulty there. You can see the scattered landmine and unexploded explosive. Actually, full Sudan was full of landmines. Everywhere you go, you have to search the mine, and then you may have to move the step. Sometimes we used to take risk driving in the car or observer vehicle, having a white flag, risking our own life, just leaving the mine threat. So that was the very dangerous situation for at the initial observer. So that was hindering our movement. And also the civilian people, they had a lot of accident, lost their legs, hands, limbs. There was a very heavy condition there. The next point I should talk in the mistrust among the parties of competition. Actually, as the question was separation and to different ethnicity. So they were always fighting each other, including when they were moving with us. They used to quarrel each other. We have to stop them. They could not see their face each other. So that's why they actually really frustrating sometimes to us. Whenever we have a meeting for them, some people just avoid the meeting as they left the room. So that was a very difficult situation. Third point is nomad nations. Actually, Sudanese, they don't have the personal or permanent villages or address. They used to move from one place to another place. So when it comes from the establishment of institutions or something like that, when you establish a village sometimes, and next month you go, nobody's there. It's just they're left to the other places because they are basically cattlers. They have a lot of cattle, so they move from one place to another place. So you don't make their life happy because they don't stay in one place. That's another challenge for us. The next point is poor law and order situation. Actually, there's no law and order situation on the ground. That's why UN took the correct step to reform the police department, and they were very successful, I must say. And very importantly, the influence of neighboring countries. Sudan was surrounded by a number of countries, and most of the countries had direct political influence over the Omar al-Bashir, who was in power for 22 years with the support of the neighboring government. Especially that time, Libya, Gaddafi was direct bossing and giving full support to the Bashir. At the same time, from Egypt, the Hosni Mubarak also another blessing for the Omar. So that's why he was in power for 22 years, and all the guidelines he used to get from them. So rather than logic, rather than the pacification by the UN, he used to listen to those his bosses. So that was another problem for the UN side. Lack of communication and transport infrastructure. Here, as I said, no roads, no transport. We used to move directly over the desert. Half of the country was desert. So that was a very difficult situation for us to have a quick response towards the situation. Sometimes some village was burned and we have to take 6 to 8 hours journey to reach there. Thereby something already happened. And the lack of command control in SPLA, as I said, actually they are a military militia force. They are not organized force. They are just actually freedom fighters. They don't have actually someday I find one putting on lieutenant rank. And next day he came as a major, and after 2 days he is a full colonel with the same man different rank, because they used to put on rank by themselves and they used to declare themselves. So actually there's no rules for them, and they used to talk one day one things, next day they have to change their words. So actually they have no command control and infrastructure. That was another difficult situation for us. And last point, I was the multi-sector crisis. Sudan is a huge country. It has 3 fronts for fighting. One is Sudan, one is South Sudan, one is Darfur. There's another mission was going on. So the UN has to focus in different places, different operations. That was the difficult situation there. Next slide, please. So that was the UNMISS. So now I'd like to talk about the United Nations operation in Ivory Coast. This started in 2000 and closed in 2017. Though the peace treaty was signed in 2003, but mission was started in 2000 because in 2000 the crisis started in 2000. John Garang, he was the military boss in Ivory Coast. He barred all the political leaders for the elections on the 2000, and he did not allow any political party to come in the election. Thereby, the crisis started. The military people wanted to take the power, and he banned all the politics, and thereby the UN mission started. And when the things become deteriorated, the John Guerra, sorry, I said the wrong name, is Robert Guy. Actually, Robert Guy was the head of military. He barred the things. Then what he said, his situation is not in favor. What he did, he put in the power in Laurent Garbo. He is the another power blessed by the Robert Guy. He was in power from the military backed. At that time, he was in power up to 2000 to 2011. Actually, he was actually revolt or rebellion type leader with local support. So he didn't listen any international law. He doesn't have any right to be the power. So that's why the mission started at 2003. You can see the main mandate was protecting civilian and support the government in DDR and security sector, and the acting under Chapter 7, the Security Council by the resolution of 2004, the 27 February 2004, it was established, and election was done in 2011. After election, the things goes wrong. So again, the mission was extended to stabilize the after election situation. So that was the second part of the mission. So next, please. So on the initially, the troops was 6,698, and police around 7,000, military observer 195. And the after on closing on December 2016, the police was 2020 individual, and the battalion is 418, and the expert as it is closing, so it was only 95, and contingent one around 2,000. So it was a closing at time. Next, please. You see, this is the Ivory Coast map or operational map. The Abidjan, you can see in the coast is the capital at the lower portion. Yeah, here the troops was from Togo. It is directly supported by the Likon force of France. They were directly supporting them. I must say, the main force here was the French force Likon, and the UN was with his mandate and with the support of the Likon, because they were the main fighter element there. And you can see the others, the western sector. Here, the Bangladeshi people are there in the MAN. They are the Bangladesh sector, 3 places, and the east sector. This was some Ghana, Morocco, Senegal. Basically, when I was there, then Pakistan came out. Yamoussoukro. From there, the east sector was deployed. So basically, there was 3 sectors. One is west, led by Bangladesh. That is east, led by the Pakistan, and the what is down toward the south. That was basically the Togo, and the whole country, the different camp of French force, the Likon force, highly heavily equipped and highly mobile force was there to support the operation. Next slide. Actually, the operation, this is basically military operation, because there are a lot of arms was there. It's some sort of rebels was there, and there are you can understand 2010 there was huge hue and cry in the mission. A lot of people died, and the airport was closed. I think the Bangladeshi people can remember the Bangladeshi force withdrawn from the airport, and that's why some people lost their job, because there was some fightings going on, and some contingent left their arms, ammunition behind and left the places due to the guerrilla attack. So that's why the situation was very horrible. So after that, the arms ammunition was collected and it was demobilized, and election was done. Some sorts of peaceful pacification was their meeting, that some helping the peoples, and the social activity was there. Next slide. The difficulty faced, lack of popular support was French army. Actually, France it is a French colony, and the local people are not in support of France as of now. And the French army was deployed there to enforce their presence there, so that their installation, their interests are taken over or seen over by the liquid force. So they actually, may knowing it, the Ivory Coast is the second largest gold mine deposition is there. And all those gold was extracted by French, or most of the gold field is owned by French. They used to get a lot of gold from the Ivory Coast deposition. That's what the main interest of the French forces. They used to protect their business there. So they are not liked by the local people. Unpopular government in power. As I said, the Gajabo, or the people who was in power, he was not internationally recognized. He was by force, backed by military. So that's why he was not cooperative, because when UN will be there, and he lost his power. So that's why he was not cooperating. Influence of Mali and Nigeria. There's two big power in two neighbor. So they were directly involved in the politics. Unprotected border area, huge border, especially in Mali. The rebels and miscreants used to come and go. There was no control over the border. So that's why arms ammunition used to come from Mali. That's another difficult situation. The prison condition, the prison was full of prisoners, because as the power people was the bad people. So that's why they used to arrest all the oppositions and the protester in the prison, and it is full. So that's why we had a drastic action to reconstruct the prison condition. Next slide. So now today's topic is the state to the people movement. So I must support the topic, because these are the advantages, like the better output, because UN is for the people, not for the country. Because if you do something good, the people will remember you, and that will be long lasting, because the power people will be from today is there, and tomorrow he's gone out, because people will be there and they'll be remembering you. That's why output will be better. Infrastructure development, because if you work on the ground, develop the justice, develop the police, develop the school, develop the roads and construction, then the long-lasting effect will be there. So rather than supporting the government who will be in power and just forget the things. Institutional development, as I said, rather than talking with the government people, so let's talk on the ground and develop the infrastructure. Long-lasting effect, this effect should be for the long, when the mission will be withdrawn, even though the things will be on the ground. Improve humanitarian situation, definitely if you work for people, the standard will be up and people will have a good life. What is the difficulty there? Non-cooperation from local government, because if you work with the people without consent of the government, they will not cooperate to you, because they lose the control over the people. So that's why they don't like you go directly on the ground. They will love to be with them, so that they have the control over the event. That's the major difficulties. Conflict situation, because they don't cooperate, and frequently if you want to go some places, the government will not permit you, because they lose control. Frequently they will bar your movement. They will forbid every step, so that you cannot go for the development. And lack of integration of mission activities, because government will do one thing and you will do one thing, so there will not be integration of the mission, thereby the mission will be achieved. Next please. So the last one is my recommendations. More emphasis on local communication. Definitely there should be the local people should be first, and local leaders should be integrated with the team. Institution development, definitely, as I said, police, justice, school, all those should be developed. Coordination, but there should be coordination with the higher levels, otherwise they will not allow you to work. And integration of local leaders with the mission team. That should be integrated team, where all people from the local leaders, like tribal leaders, they should be there to work with them. Thank you very much for giving this scope. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Major Atiq, for your part of the presentation. I think a couple of important aspects that Major Atiq shared with us. One is the risk factors that all the UN military observers do undertake on a day-to-day basis, and of course the intricacies of the mission itself. And so our next panelist today, and we are very happy to welcome ZM Sarwat Hossain, and who happened to be doing his practicum with the Conflict and Resilience Research Institute, Canada. So he's a graduate student in Peace and Conflict Studies, and he's doing his joint master's program now, which is kind of offered both by the University of Winnipeg and Manitoba. He has served in Bangladesh Navy for 25 years as a commissioned officer. He earned his master's degree in Defense Studies and Peace and Human Rights Development from Bangladesh University of Professionals, Dhaka. He also has a diploma in Navy and Joint Professional Military Education from the U.S. Naval War College, Rhode Island, USA. Commander Sarwat has on-ground conflict resolution and peacekeeping experiences in the UN mission in Liberia. And he was a military observer and staff officer at the same mission and forces headquarters. And he lives in Winnipeg, as you understand. So, without further ado, Commander Sarwat, floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for your very kind introduction. As it has been already discussed at length that we'll be talking today on state to people-centric, peacekeeping operation shifting. And I will also rely on my experience on my mission experience in Liberia, as well as some other, associated academic references. So, next slide, please. So, the scope of my today's that is presentation, as you can see on the screen, that why the people-centered peace operations are needed, and as it has been justified by the documents or literatures published by UN and other research organizations, but we need to understand that why this shift is required or time worthy. Then there are implications if we do that, and also there are some impediments through the process. So I will try to go through that, and I will also refer back to my UNMIL experience and perspective. And finally, I will just try to put some points forward so that the transition, when it takes place, that can be smooth, or what are the issues we should look into. So next slide, please. So while talking about the peace operations, we must understand that these operations are predominantly state-centric, and there is a significant portion of these efforts, those are focused on supporting host government and their state institution and threats to them. And it is to be understood in the light of reality, because when the peace operation, the idea was conceived, the political realism was predominant international relations theory, and all these states which operates under the assumption of that particular system, they preferably inclined themselves to the understanding of a peace-centric operation system. And for the most part, the UN itself is a state-oriented entity. So there was no way that they would be sorting after a peace operation which is people-centric. But now time has changed, or so we will see. So I think it's an opportune time to consider that how placing people at the center of the peace operations, and if the performance is being assessed that way, then we will be able to make more efficient accountability, and that will be locally grounded and effective. So in understanding the shift, we must understand that there are benefits to it, but the process is not that easy or smooth in my understanding. Next slide, please. So as we can see here, the already Dr. Ahmed has covered the HIPPO report, 2015. Thereafter, there was a summary resolutions on sustaining peace in 2016, and the one I will be focusing a bit more is the 2018 A4P, that is Action for Peacekeeping Initiative by the present UN Secretary General. And also there is a long-term understanding of sustainable peacekeeping, which is associated with the Sustainable Development Agenda, and that is visioned up to 2030 by UN literature. It is being supported accordingly. So in this roadmap, actually we are in a phase where it has been, I would say, the preliminary or starting phase, because 2018 Action for Peace actually started what it was a seminal shift from the core aspects in the core aspects of peacekeeping, and it started taking place very slowly due to many reasons, which already the previous came into the previous discussion. So next slide, please. So the Secretary General's initiative that focuses on 8 key issues, and according to the narrative of the literature, it says that those are directly associated with the people-centric peace operations, newly embraced concept, and those are like politics, then women, peace and security, protection of civilian and peacekeepers as well, then safety and security holistically, then performance and accountability. This is very important. I will touch upon that a bit later. And peace building and sustainable peace partnerships. It includes the partnership with host countries organization as well as international organizations who helps the process keep going. And finally, the conduct of peacekeepers and peacekeeping operations. So all these are very important in understanding the whole shift from state-centric to people-centric peace operations. Now I will turn a little bit towards my experience in UNMIL or UNMIL, wherever you are staying. The way it is said, both are the correct pronunciation. So in UNMIL, we actually had quite a different experience than many other missions. It is a long mission, and it was established in 2003, and it went up to 2013. So also compared to the other long-running missions, it was not that long, but it was intense, and it was politically significant for many reasons. It actually was created due to the two-pronged civil war that basically started in 80s by that Master Sergeant Samuel Doe, who led a coup d'etat to against the elected president Richard Tolbert, and he murdered him and summarily executed 13 of his cabinet members. Now this bloody blood spattered history of Liberia has something to do with the present situation as well. And thereafter, the history again repeated himself when Tolbert was ousted and brutally killed by Charles Taylor and Prince Johnson. And another spell of violence started, and it continued up to 2005. Then 2005 election was there, and fortunately, I would say that Taylor did not embrace the fate as the previous president. He was imprisoned, and later he was convicted for the war crime he committed. Now finally, at this point, Liberia is in my opinion, and I am respectfully differing a bit from Colonel Mamun, is not in of that good a condition, because according to the human rights indicators and the social justice and peace building indicators, Liberia does not hold a good ground according to the world view. Next slide, please. So the activities undertook by the United Nations mission was protection of civilians, reform of justice and security institution, human rights protection, then public information and protection of UN personnel, and these were mandated tasks. And thereby the military actively acted as eyes and ears for UNMIL through military observer program, and there was armed contingent for protection. This is quite standard protocol for all the peacekeeping operations, where military and political both components are present. So people of all tier were more open and transparent while expressing their view to the MILOBs, and they had more knowledge of ground level activities or the whatever the reaction is coming out of the people for the mission or the political process going around. Next slide, please. So in reflection to that understanding, the formal narrative, which has been, given by United Nations on the 30 years tenure, reflected that is very significantly different, unfortunately, because Secretary General, he congratulated the people. I'm saying it is the official narrative of United Nations mission in Liberia. You can go to the website and see this, that he congratulated everybody, the government of Liberia, and he said that it was ensured sustained peace, sustainable development, and everything. And also, there is one important component that the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has helped very significantly at the outset of this mission. So he also congratulated them. Altogether, it's ended with a very high note, as we can see. But unfortunately, the Human Rights Committee, even in 2020, they said that the wartime injustice or the war crimes had not been addressed in Liberia yet. This is a 2020 report I'm saying. And also the Liberia's HDI index, Human Development Index, is valued in 2018. It is decimal 4, which is low human development category, positioning it 176 out of 189 countries. So that necessarily does not reflect the General Secretary's idea of hope that sustaining hard-won peace and country, the people progressing and thriving, all these good words actually doesn't suit the present situation, unfortunately. So the apparent success of the mission was not, I would say, that significantly supported by the outcome or the political and economic outcome the country is enduring now. Next slide, please. So another very important aspect of the failure, though the word is quite strong, failure, but I will insist on using it because the war crime of many perpetrators of the two-pronged violence, and which has affected the people of Liberia very vehemently, was not addressed at all. Especially Charles Taylor, he, according to this is, the Liberian people, they think that he was not served with justice. He was not even tried in Liberia. There was a reconciliation commission in Liberia, but they have never had any, what do we say, like sort of opportunity to interact with Charles Taylor. He was prosecuted for his instigation in the civil war in the neighboring country, not his own country. So you go on for a massacre in your own country, but the international community then excuses that or overlooks that and gets you in the prison, but not for that crime. So that is the more hardening part on the people of Liberia, that they felt that the justice was not served. And unfortunately, the UNMIL, they also did not support this idea of Liberian trial due to the risk of political instability. And this is understood that there was a DDR was going on, so there was a armed faction was were at a loose, and political stability could have been compromised. So altogether, the mission has had, when it closed, it had the most adverse impact. I would say that the people had a sustainable feeling of injustice, and they still feel it because Johnson, who was a perpetrator of the murder of the earlier president, he is still in the seat of parliament till date. It's 2020. So people had a feeling that the justice was not served in this regard. Next slide, please. So that experience actually brings me back to the implication of people-centered peace operation. As I have already said, that state-oriented architecture served better the state mechanism or the state institution. People's interests are not looked after that well, though it comes in a thinly veiled, intention that, okay, we are doing it for the people, but ultimately the indicators are in the hand of institutions. So these two doesn't tally, and we get the outcome as I have already mentioned in Liberia. So I think the implication would be, firstly, the state authority will be compromised, it will be challenged, and this is not going to be liked by the states. And as we can again understand, the UN mission, it requires state to be incorporated. The whole idea was generated on a state-based mutual understanding and mutual consensual activity. There are those three pillars. If you remove one, the mutual agreement, so that will not complete the triad of the UN peacekeeping. So state will not like, or the state entities will not like this people-centric approach happen. The second aspect, that due to the impact of conflict, the trust factor between the state and the people, it erodes. So whenever the transition is going to be made, it required to be held in a social, or or at least socio-economic, other than the political realm, it should be activated in that way. Now the social realm and political realm is not I would say in totality with UN peacekeeping mission. Let me clear it up. Like, if we consider a mission to be operating in the social cohesion and justice level, then the state entity or the political level will be undermined, because as Major Atiq mentioned, that people's interest will be highlighted more than the state interest. So again, that will come into way. And another implication I can imagine of that, it will there will be a shift to show the effectiveness of peace operations. Now it is assessed via the indicators which are state operated and state owned, that how our nation is doing. And when we will shift it to people oriented operation, then we will have to rethink the whole assessment and accountability system, and suddenly it might look like that missions are not effective for a while when we do the transition. So those are the implications that comes in my mind. Next slide, please. And now finally, I like to consider 4 issues which we should think about, or UN should think about when the transition is being made, or firstly, the people-centered principles and practices. Now it should or it will have to come from top. The top UN hierarchy as well as the state mechanism must embrace people-centered concept, which is attainable in practice. For a mission head or even a contingent commander or whoever operating in his or her capacity in the mission doesn't have this, I would say it's beyond their pay grade to make a change. So the policies, principles should be implemented, and then practices will be made. The next thing I would say that missions should involve more local actors, and then only the transition will be made possible. And local communities, they can be involved in conflict analysis. Then there can be advisory group from citizens. They can give feedback on assessment analysis. So more local actors involvement in a local level. So that is one. The next one would be community and civil society representatives in a country, though it is war torn, or a I would say the structure or infrastructure, that means the societal infrastructure will be weak, but still there should be representative from the society to commission independent institution, or to give the, if possible, the academic input or something, but that should be done locally. So that will be more people oriented instead of doing it outsource it, the way it is being done now. And finally, the host states, they will have to agree to make it more people-centered, as I started with, because without their sole intention to make it people-centric, the effort of UN will go in vain, to be factful, because UN is UN is a state-centric body and looks after state interest. I mean, till that. Now, the policy papers circulated with a good intention to make it people oriented, but states or the particular, host state who is hosting a mission will have to agree to this. Then only there can be dialogue between the UN and host countries that will be reflected in the MOU, the mission mandate, and everything. And the transition to a people-centric mission will be possible then only. I like to thank to the references which I already flashed in the screen, and I took a help from the UN website as well. So that's all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Commander Sarwat, for your brilliant presentation. And we have really enlightened ourselves on a couple of major themes that I think is consistent in today's presentation. And I'll quickly start the last part. And for the sake of time, we would be just kind of browse through the presentation a little bit. And so here I am, and I took part in United Nations mission for the referendum in Western Sahara. MINURSO in acronym is a French acronym, and I just don't had this opportunity to use the French acronym today. So that was my mission that I participated from 2001 and 2. And as you see on the screen, this is actually the location of the mission area. And on the left side of the screen, audience, you can see the location of Morocco, Algeria, and here is Mauritania. So these are the three nation states bordering Western Sahara. And Morocco, Algeria, Mauritania are the key actors in terms of influencing the mission. And on the right side of the screen, you see a detailed map of the Western Sahara area. And as you know, Sahara is the longest desert in the on the earth, and it stretches diagonally in the African continent from northeast to southwest. So we are talking about just western part, southern western part of the Sahara desert, as you see. And this, I mean, I'm not very sure if the map is very clear to the audience. Nonetheless, you have the Atlantic Ocean onto the western side, and from Morocco, there is a border, as you see, demarcation line up here, and these are pretty much straight. Mandate. We all spoke about mandates in our today's presentation. So here are the, there are a number of mandates, but I just wanted to show you three here. And this mission was established by Security Council Resolution 690 on 29th April 1991. So actually, it is nearly 30 years of mission. And it was in accordance with the settlement proposal accepted on 30th August 1988 by Morocco and the Frente Popular para la Liberación de Sagui Alhambra de Oro, in short, Polisario, is a Spanish acronym. Second mandate was the settlement plan as approved by the Security Council, provided for the transitional period for the preparation of the referendum in which the people of Western Sahara would choose between independence and integration. So this is the core mandate on which the mission was launched. And finally, the Secretary General Special Representative holds the exclusive responsibility over matters relating to the referendum. So here, as you see, berm means it's a sand wall separating the two forces. Exactly parties, I would say. So Moroccan troops on the west and the Frente Polisario on the right. There's a buffer zone, and there's a restricted zone and areas with limited restrictions. So this is a graphical representation where UN peacekeepers actually travel, patrol, and observe if there is any violation of the ceasefire. And this is also in this slide, you can see the whole stretch is actually is a berm, and I think it is the second largest earth feature on earth after Chinese Great Wall. if I'm not wrong, statistically speaking. And we flew over half part of the berm, and it took 6 to 7 hours through helicopters. It's huge, elongated from northeast to southwest, as you see here. So this berm actually, kind of separated the Moroccan troops and the Polisarios. These are the two parties in conflict. And a little bit of background, the Polisarios, commonly known, is a ragtag band of indigenous population. Commonly, they identify themselves as Sahrawis. And they are actually the original indigenous population of the Sahara or Western Sahara. So when Morocco, anyway, today in the presentation, I'm just using the generic term. So when Morocco annexed through the Green March in 1974, there was a war, and therefore they were displaced, and they were eventually pushed towards the east side of the berm, close to Algeria. And here you see the Moroccan army. Moroccan army is considered the third largest and powerful army in Africa. They have quite a large standing army, and they are supported by France and USA in terms of their military hardware. So there are three military agreements. So military agreement 1 is about the ceasefire, and military 2 with the Polisario signed in 1999, and third one with the Royal Moroccan Army, in short RMA. And the aim of these were actually to reduce the dangers from unexploded ordnances, exchange information, and mark and destroy a number of these unexploded ordnances. And this is one of the key mission mandate was to hold an identification commission. And audience, you can read this slide yourself, but I'm just going to explain that the main idea, as you see from the mission mandate, that to hold a referendum. So the question arose later on that who would be actually allowed to vote? Because if you hold a referendum, then there is a chance that, let's say, the occupying power or occupying nation might lose, because the popular demand would be to have a separate state by themselves. So UN came up with the idea of commissioning an identification commission, and their task was to update this 1974, when the actual annexation took place, and there was a census, and it's called Spanish census, and to update this one and identify, create a voter list of eligible voters. And as I left the mission area in 2002, the Identification Commission could not finish their task. And with a little bit of research over the past couple of days, and in preparing for today's webinar, I also didn't find any concrete evidence that Identification Commission actually could finish their job, and therefore no referendum was held. And again, ladies and gentlemen and dear audience, it is 30 years that the mission is in place. Own reflections, there are a list of things I wanted to share with you. It's a status quo mission, meaning no side is winning, or UN has kind of acted as a neutral party in between these two groups, Morocco and Polisarios. The core mandate is still not achieved. It's a frozen conflict because hardly there are any hostilities. Especially I can reflect back from my particular period of duty and assignment in 2001 and 2. The violation of military agreement was really, really seldom. And I can also testify that the size of Sahrawis or Polisario was at that time very minor. I mean, they could have not kind of launch a full-scale military attack on the heavily trained and armed Royal Moroccan Army. And what I feel personally that Morocco really gains from this status quo, especially Morocco has the access to Atlantic Ocean. It's a very rich area for fishing, especially tuna. And also there is a place called Bukra, and it is actually a phosphate mine, and has a little bit of statistics here. 1.93 million tons of phosphates were exported from the disputed territory in 2018, estimated 164 million US dollars. So one side always gains out of this status quo situation. That is my main point. There are over 200,000 Polisarios are being housed in refugee camp in Algeria. The cities, the name of the place is called Tindouf. And as I said, unmatched military powers. Actually, both these sides are really asymmetrical. Royal Moroccan army is, as I said, one of the highly trained and regular army, and it is matched against a ragtag band of Polisarios. And I would also like to say that if you do cost benefit analysis of 30 years of investment of UN funding and budget there, and if you could not achieve the mandate, the core mandate, I would say, then whether it is actually justifiable to continue such missions. So this is a question I'm posing to the audience here. And of course, geopolitical entanglement. You have heard from all the previous panelists that big powers have definite interest in some of the areas, and possibly keeping alive the conflict might help to continue in terms of commerce or trades. But just a quick reflection. I didn't want to bore you with all this text. Just see here. It's a very latest, what do you call, text from the permanent mission of France in United Nations, and they're talking about Resolution 2468, which was passed in 2019, actually. And I leave it to you, the audience, to read it yourself. But the core issue that I see as a former peacekeeper of that mission is, in 2001 and 2, the same type of text we have also seen, we had seen at the time. Nothing changed. The parties came and went back. The parties were engaged in dialogue. The dialogue broke up. Again, the negotiation and negotiator came and they were brought together. So what I'm trying to say that in 2019, the way France has put its logic behind, extension of the mandate and the mission for 1 year is actually same that we saw 20 years ago. So this is my question today, that can such missions actually achieve durable peace and justice on ground? And this is what I had in terms of slides. And thank you very much for patiently listening to our presentations, dear audience, today. And we are now in the question and answer session. And as I said, for the paucity of time, we'll be quickly doing it. And I find Dr. Evelyn Mayanja with us. So I will be requesting if Dr. Evelyn Mayanja would like to ask a question to the panelist. Are you there, Dr. Evelyn?
I am. Thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you so much to all the presenters. I have a couple of questions, but in the interest of time, let me start from where you have ended. Can such missions achieve durable peace in Western Sahara, in Liberia, in all those countries we have talked about, especially because when you consider all those conflicts in the sub-Saharan Africa, they are driven by resources. And all the local actors who get engaged, they're just used to engage in these proxy wars. Who is benefiting? As you mentioned, we have France, we have the US, and all other superpowers who are actually the same nations with a veto power on the Security Council. So then the question is, I'm making it even more, maybe more complicated, that really do we need peacekeeping, given that it has become like a neo-colonial agenda to reinforce the exploitation of Africa's resources. And today we see it going to all other countries. It is all driven by resource exploitation. And I'm afraid that today you find that those superpowers have pulled out from sending their own peacekeepers. So they are sending others from developing countries, again, just to use us. So then maybe the question is, do we really need peacekeeping? From your perspective, do you think peacekeeping will ever achieve sustainable peace? Because even in Liberia, Ivory Coast, all these countries, Sudan, we cannot talk about peace. Liberia is really embroidered in poverty, crime, violence of all forms, corruption, dysfunctional institutions. Maybe that will bring us to really, when we talk about peacekeeping, for you, what did you achieve? And are you happy with what you did when you find that really peacekeeping does not transform structures? And as you mentioned, it is not people-centered. People do not benefit from peacekeeping. And especially, as Sarwat mentioned, you find that this peacekeeping totally discards people's interventions and their cultures. So, and when we say it is state-centric, again, you look at the state structures. Actually, in Africa, they call it the white man's burden, because states were not formulated by the Africans or by the Asians or whatever. So we are carrying that burden. And you find that those who are interested with leadership in those countries, they have no interest in the people. They are only after their economic benefits. Surprisingly, the UN, up to now, has failed to see that loophole. It is unbelievable. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Evelyn, for your, I would say, very insightful question. And actually, one of our audiences, he also kind of possibly echoed what Dr. Evelyn said, that is there any connection between natural resources and conflict? So the question is open. Any panelist would like to just kindly be brief about your perspective, and so please go on. Any panelists?
I like to take the question, sir. Actually, I had two missions, and the questionnaire is directly related on the ground. Basically, I've seen on the ground actually what the question is on the ground. This is really happening. That means in the Sudan is a deposit of oil, and the most of the oil was deposited in South Sudan. And the then Sudanese government, you are not listening to the US for the oil trade and all these things. So there was one of the reason so that South Sudan can be separated, and the South Sudan government can listen to the US authority for the exporting the oil. That means the main conflict was for oil. Similarly, South Sudan was separated, another oil deposit in Darfur. So another mission was studying there to get that oil also. So that means main conflict or interest was the oil. So with the same intention, China has come on the ground, and he was spending billions of dollars to the people to get the hold of the oil. That means the war of oil was there. In the Ivory Coast, the same thing was there, but material was different. It was gold. Whole country had lot of gold mining, and France was there, the protecting the mine, that means gold mining, and the UN was supporting the legalizing the French presence in the Ivory Coast. This is my opinion. That means the question is perfect, and definitely the crisis is for the natural resources to get the hold by the superpower. Thank you so much.
If I may jump in a little quick, to answer Dr. Manja and the other question you flashed. I would rather have a modest or dialed down response to the question, because what I think that there were alternatives tried. For the mission, I particularly discussed Liberia, the ECOWAS, they tried. So if we don't have a better solution, and I won't say these are conspiracy theories, but every good initiative is also had some flip sides. So these are very complicated issues which is dealt with a particular United Nations mission, and the outcome is not as expected. That I do agree. But in the absence of any, suitable alternative, it is this is the philosophy is simple. Like there is something is better than nothing. So as we did not get any better alternative, we tried it regionally. Then ECOWAS was very effective initially, but it faltered. So I think it should continue, and it should go through reforms so that it can meet our expectation and standards. Thank you.
Colonel Mamun, do you have any thing to add here? So unmute the mic, please.
No, not really. The question is pretty much genuine, and that's what is the reality. But again, as peacekeepers' point of view, when we go and start our operation or we start working on the ground, you see, the peacekeeping missions are being deployed. Definitely, there are bigger agendas. There are unspelled agendas by the big powers. But on a practical scenario, as we go and work on specific issues, we would like to see that is the situation improved from where we started and where we ended. Now, as some of the speakers say and cited example of Liberia, yes, the Liberia human index has not reached to a very satisfactory level. But as we compare it from a civil war situation to today's situation, it has improved. Now, it takes time for a destroyed country to come to a stable situation in true sense. So I can see that Liberia has improved, but it has not improved to a country, or it is not comparable to a country which was not in a war-like situation, which was not destroyed in that way, the way the Liberia went. And this is one side of the story, and the other side of the story of behind the screen is that yes, there are agendas of the big powers, and that regulates a lot, that determines a lot on how much the mission mandate would be achieved. So what was spelled out, what was a disclosed mandate, from that point of view, I would say that it had some success in Liberia, as I witnessed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a couple of interesting questions from the audience, and I'm very much intrigued by the questions. So here is one, and I think it is posed towards Commander Sarwat's A4P model. Commander Sarwat, would you be briefly commenting about the question of Mr. Carlos?
Just I will quickly read through this. The 8 core areas are already discussed in the previous slide. So, what do you believe? Okay. First of all, good evening, Carlos. Nice to see you. I mean, with us. I believe that this is going to be a turning point, because the present UN Secretary General, he took the there were a I would say policy gap even after the HIPPO report has been implemented. That was a huge initiative, and I would say watershed event in the reformation of peacekeeping operation solely. But these 8 core areas has a holistic approach, and it addresses the associated area, especially the economic and social aspects of peacekeeping operation, which was, I mean, they are saying it that's different from the earlier reports. So I do believe that this report will have more profound impact if implemented in a right way, and if those 8 core areas are addressed, which are quite contemporary and time-demanding areas, then we will have a better output to make the UNPKO people-centered. In short, that's my answer. Thank you.
And there is a follow-up question, though, and it is particularly connected with our theme today as well. How do you really see COVID-19 impacting UN peacekeeping operations? And it is, again, a general question to all panelists, but might be Commander Sarwat would get involved, because A4P is again mentioned here.
Okay, as I already mentioned that this will require a lot of work. Already I mentioned it. But the COVID has an unprecedented impact upon all the things happening on this planet, and UN peacekeeping operation will be no difference. I would say, fortunately, the Ebola has been encountered through a particular peacekeeping mission, which was a partial pandemic or epidemic, I would say. So they have some experiences on ground from Liberia, that how to battle this situation. In particular, holistically speaking, the economic and political implication of COVID will be long term, and it will have adverse effect on world economy for a quite long period. This is a foreseeable future if we understand it that way. So I would say that from the budgeting perspective, the UNPKO will be, in quite a problem from that perspective. But altogether, as the matter progresses, as the life progresses on this planet post-COVID, I think PKO will keep pace and progress. That's my hopeful. I'm expecting that, and that's my wishful thinking actually. Thank you.
Next question is there on the screen, and is again a very important question, I believe. How do you elevate tension between local actors and state? And I think Dr. Evelyn also partly touched upon this aspect, that this trust, and if there are some agenda behind the mind of do-gooders, quote unquote, then actually you cannot build sustainable trust or long-lasting trust. So I would like to hear from Colonel Mahmud first, followed by Major Atiq and Sarwat. What do you think? Did you see any interesting way to build trust and navigating through this behind the door agendas?
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for involving me in this question. As you remember, or as we see the mission setups, in the mission there's a mission head, and under him there are political wings, there are security wings, there are military wings, and there are public relations. There are it's more of a if you can resemble this to be a kind of government system. In a government, whatever wings are there, in the mission headquarters, there are similar wings. So for negotiation, the UN headquarters or the mission chief, in consultation with the UN headquarters, he actually runs a multi-pronged approach to draw a fine balance between the actors or the influencing factor in a mission area, like the opposing sides and the local people's mind. They have to take into consideration into that the neighboring governments, the law enforcement agencies. All these, they have to do continuous and prolonged efforts, regular talk, regular meeting with all the relevant parties, and that's how actually the negotiation goes on. It's not a one meeting event; it's a continuous process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kausar. I'd like to add here very shortly. The answer could be only two from my side. First is the trust mutual the two people. If they trust each other, then all the problem will be solved. So to build the trust, they have to come on the table and to discuss the point. And second issue is if the people in the state, or who is running the state, is represented from the local people. That means if the popular support is there to the state, that means the problem will be easily solved. If the state people are not supported by the people, that the mistrust continues. So that means some fair election and representation of the population in the power, that only can minimize the gap between locals and the state. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I would say that if we consider the local actors as the other NGOs, IGOs, or aid agencies working side by side, UN and the state, then the tension was alleviated by establishing a common objective or the common ground for working. That helps. Like, we want to educate your people, so state agrees, okay, you can go ahead. We want to treat your people with better medication. So using this common ground or common objective works better, instead of imposing authority over each other. So that would be my answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think I have one question directed towards me, and this is about priority of ceasefire. Okay, dear audience, the ceasefire actually took effect in 1991, and at that moment, the MINURSO operation was launched. And of course, ceasefire, the primary intention of ceasefire is to minimize the civilian casualties. And as you might be aware, that in today's world, civilians are the prime casualty of any armed conflict. So, of course, ceasefire worked very well, and till now it is holding pretty, I would say, nicely and credibly. And of course, it is. Royal Moroccan Army has the resources and capacity, and they are doing their best of the part. And I was visiting a number of units, and I attended meetings during my tenure, and they have all the good intentions. But the question is, at the end of the day, actually we are talking about today, that does this kind of mission actually help to establish sustainable peace on ground? So thank you very much for the question. And we come to the end of today's webinar in this way. And before I actually end, uh, I think we have another question here. Okay, let's take this question, because it's kind of interesting, and it's regarding South Sudan. And if Major Atiq would be amenable to answer, I don't. Would you like to take it, Major Atiq?
Thank you so much, Carlos, for the question. Actually, I was serving in the UNMISS, which was part of Sudan, and another mission is mission in South Sudan. So the South Sudan was independent with the mandate or election in 2010, and after that, the separate mission was in South Sudan. So to avoid these type of situations, I should suggest that UN should work with the local populations, where the local community is directly involved with the UN team. Like you can see in Sierra Leone, when UN left the country, still people remember the UN. Why? Because there's so much of uh, construction job. Even there is some road named the Bangladesh Road. That means when Bangladesh contingent withdraw from the place, still people, Bangla is the second language of Sierra Leone, where nobody speak Bangla, because the UN peacekeepers could win the heart of the people. So I believe the same things can happen in South Sudan when the UN work directly with the people. That time, when the UN leaves, so people should be remembered UN, and all those differences between UN, the local people, all the states would be eliminated. So the answer from my side is more cohesionship with the local people, with the authority, that can reduce this type of incident from 2016. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we conclude, we typically request the panelists to have their last words. So we'll go around to the panelists. So Colonel Mamun to start first with his last words to end this, and we'll follow the same sequence as we started. Colonel Mamun, please. Microphone, sir.
Thank you very much for involving me here. And I would say that UN missions so far have gone and so far executed. Not all have seen success, but there are success. What I strongly feel that there are major rooms for big restructuring of the UN missions, and I would say that the true intention of the world powers and empowerment of UN headquarters itself decides largely on the ultimate success of the missions they deploy forces. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In conclude, I like to say that there may be some criticism towards the UN, but the achievement of UN, we must thankfully remember the life standard has changed, the world situation changed, and after effect is just uncountable. So the UN peace process should continue in spite of different criticism, and more emphasis should be given on the people-centric, so that win of heart of the people will long-lasting effect on the situations. And that's the only solution, I think. Thank you.
I will actually conclude augmenting the answer by Major Atiq for Carlos's last question. I think the problem of overrunning the existing UN mission capability or everything, it actually very unfortunate, but we must remember that now the protocol in force, that is responsibility to protect and everything, came out of a massacre in Rwanda and Srebrenica. So we have things to learn, and I think that 2006 event actually taught us that how to perform with more capability and under the circumstances of higher threat and metrics and everything. And people are learning from that gradually. So hopefully with better mission capability and better augmentation of protection forces, those aspects will be avoided in future peace operations, those unfortunate life losses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if Dr. Evelyn Mayanja is still with us, Evelyn, do you have something to add? And that would be the last part of our today's session. Dr. Evelyn.
I really wish to thank you all for your services. I always admire your courage. And I think you are the best suited people to advise us on how to improve on peacekeeping. Yeah, thank you so much. And I've told Kazy many times, let's keep in touch and see how we can improve, because peacekeeping and the United Nations are really very, very important for peace building and for maintaining global security. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, dear audience, here we will conclude our today's session. And it's the first step of our long project, I would say, in terms of projecting the personal experiences of former UN peacekeepers. And dear audience, you might be very surprised to learn that there are actually hundreds of former UN peacekeepers are living in this great country of Canada, which is also the started the whole model of UN peacekeeping back in early late 50s. So we are very hopeful that our today's discussion will continue, our dialogue would continue revolving around the reform of the current US peacekeeping operations. And you have heard all the brilliant ideas and reflections, experiences of our panelists today, and they touched upon a lot of issues that need to be taken care in terms of effective UN peacekeeping model for the future. And dear audience, I just wanted to highlight one thing is that as you might have noticed, all of us are actually from Bangladesh. We lived a considerable part of our time and our life in Bangladesh. And Bangladesh Army actually is traditionally contributed the highest number of troops and officers in the UN peacekeeping operations since 1988. And it is actually 32, 33 years going on Bangladesh contributed its forces and its capacities towards keeping world peace. And this is a great hope also that Bangladesh hosts one of the largest UN peacekeeping training operations. In short, it's called BIPSOT, BIPSOT, and it offers a whole range of training for the before the deployment of UN peacekeepers. And with this note, we'd like to end our today's session. Thank you very much, respected panelists. We are very happy to host you. And as Dr. Evelyn said, please let's keep in touch and work closely, and we can build a better world. And we can definitely suggest for a better peacekeeping model in the future. Good evening and good night. Stay well wherever you are. Thank you.